LaNorris Sellers wins the Freshman Offensive Player of the Year for the entire country. And is South Carolina throwing shade at Bama? We talk about all that and more. Locked On Gamecock starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Thursday evening, Friday morning, whenever you are listening to this. We got a good show for you today. A lot to talk about, and we will get to it shortly. Before we do, I want to say thank you, first and foremost, to every one of our everyday listeners. Shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Remember, we are a podcast that is available on every single platform, as well as on YouTube, for your podcast listening pleasure. So thank you so much for our everydayers. Shout out to them. Before we get started, I want to also give a shout out to the sponsor of today's show, which is FanDuel. And you guys have heard me talk about them a whole bunch. We got the national championship for football coming up on Monday. And we also have NFL playoffs all weekend. And right now, from the whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And new customers, as of today, can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today. Let's get into the show. So, pretty big news for I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase or catchphrase, paraphrase, however you want to say it. The quarterback in the Gamecocks right now, LaNorris Sellers. As our good friend General Will said on Twitter the other day, Captain L'America. Just another notch on the belt and feather in the cap for LaNorris Sellers as he won the Offensive Freshman Player of the Year for all of college football, presented by the Football Writers Association of America. Now, I will tell you, as somebody that has a vote in that, he got one from me. And it was a pretty big deal, though, because if I'm being honest, LaNorris Sellers had a phenomenal year. The reason why I voted for him, and I felt like I was being objective when I did vote for him, is the final 6 games of the season. There was no player in the country, in my opinion, that was more impactful to their team than he was in the final 6 games of the regular season. Now, I kind of view this, too, as not just, like, I kind of viewed it the way the Heisman is voted for, which is through championship week and not with bowl season, especially now hold on, I'm getting some feedback from our new live producer, Allie Davison, the lovely Allie Davison. We're good. So I didn't want to kind of go about the voting like some people have said they've wanted to for like the Heisman, because like, listen, the Heisman is done before bowl season, right? Some people think it should be done afterwards because of, you know, bowl performances we've seen in the past and duds from certain Heisman winners when they get to bowl season. But in the new playoff format, if you have a team that is going to play a potential 4 more games, like you look at Ohio State right now, that's a lot of time to add on a lot more to their season when other players don't have that. Now, that's just my view on it. LaNorris Sellers finished the year, his final 6 games, with 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and I believe a 70.1, completion percentage. And he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal, and he was the catalyst and the reason why South Carolina was able to win 6 straight games. You saw it against Missouri. You saw it against Clemson. Like, they don't even get in chances to win those games if it's not for LaNorris Sellers and his playmaking ability and all those things. But it's still a really, really big deal, okay? It's still a really, really big deal. And we're bringing up the article right now. He was the 3rd team All-SEC selection as a true freshman, or as a redshirt freshman. Also a really big deal. That was voted on by the league. He ended the season with 65% completion percentage, 2,274 yards, 17 passing touchdowns, which is great, right? He finished the season with 24 total touchdowns, I believe 7 interceptions. Just a phenomenal freshman year. But here's why this is a really big deal. South Carolina continues to kind of expand its brand on the national level. We know, especially, like, it feels like a lot of times that even in the Southeast or in the SEC, or like not really in the state as much, but it can feel like this sometimes with the way that Clemson garners a lot of publicity and a lot of headlines and all that kind of stuff. But South Carolina always feels like it's second fiddle to other schools and other players around the country. And like, this is not how I feel, but I'm just saying this is how it seems to be viewed a lot. And you guys have told me this in the comments since last year when I was bringing up when I first started the show saying, hey, like, what the hell's going on here? Like, how are they voted? People think they're going to be the 15th best team in the SEC. Like, how is there, like, how are they not ranked after this game? How did this not happen? Like, and it's like, yeah, this is what we're used to. Like, it's like this long-standing national, it's not even a disrespect. It's just a dismissive attitude, which feels almost more disrespectful, if that makes sense. So having LaNorris Sellers win the Football Writers Association of America National Freshman of the Year over Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State is a really, really big deal. I think Jeremiah Smith, personally, I think he's the best player in the country. Like, I don't think he had the best season, which is what this is. But if I was having a draft and all the players in the entire realm of college football were available for the NFL draft in April, that's your number one pick. He's that good. He's that much of a difference maker. And he's that big of a difference maker at a position that everyone needs. That being said, watching LaNorris Sellers blossom as we did to finish out the regular season, it's clearly been something that a lot of people took notice on. It's one of the reasons why you start seeing these way too early Heisman talks. You talk about like where some of like FanDuel has come out with their early Heisman Trophy odds, and he's in the top 10 of those odds. You look at some of the odds to win a national championship. South Carolina is not super far behind traditional powers like LSU and Alabama and things like that. Like, LaNorris Sellers is one of the biggest reasons for that. Now, he's not the only reason. It's a team sport, and there's a lot of stuff that Shane Beamer has put in place, the staff has done a good job of, and there's also still a lot of room to grow and improve going into next year because, let's face it, you do have to replace the offensive coordinator. You still got guys you're going to lose to the draft, and there's going to be a lot of new faces on the field next year wearing garnet and black. But with what he's done, it has put South Carolina seemingly back on the map nationally. And there is something that is so charming about this school, charming about Columbia, South Carolina, and that's not me being biased, I don't think, even though, my whole family lives here and I love it. There's just something charming with this team from a national standpoint where it feels like everybody outside of that one team in the upstate and their fans pulls for South Carolina when they get the chance to. And having LaNorris Sellers be a face for this team and a face for this program is a really big deal. And it's a reason why you get guys like Aaron Nolan. It's a reason why when what's his name? What's the kid's name? The 2026 Jared Curtis, the 2026 quarterback, who's the number one player in the country in the 2026 class. There's a reason why when you have the final six teams that made the cut for his services, a kid out of Nashville, Tennessee, there's a reason why South Carolina has made that cut, right? Like this is where the program can be and can head. And things like this, whether as futile and as unimportant as they may seem, just to have a random Wednesday award that your quarterback won in the middle of January, 3 weeks after your season ended, this is a really big deal. And it's a really big deal on how to continue building and the blueprints and the building blocks of a program that wants to compete on a national level. So I'm thrilled for LaNorris. I love the Captain America nickname from General Will. Shout out to that guy. We're going to get him on the podcast at some point. Every time that I think that the internet's going to work, something crazy happens. But it is working today, and so are we. And we are very appreciative for you listening. That is all for the first part of the show. Before we get into the next segment, listen, I'm going to warn you right now. We had a really good, fun start to the show where we got to celebrate America's quarterback, South Carolina's quarterback, LaNorris Sellers, and an incredible award that he won. Second part of the show, going to break it down a little bit because we got to talk about the basketball game last night in Vandy and how miserable of experience that was as the Gamecocks start 0-4. And we're also going to talk about, did South Carolina's newest linebacker and the university itself throw some shade at Alabama? We will talk about that in the next block. But before we do, I want to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. Hit it, producer Allie. There she is. Listen, FanDuel, you guys have heard me brag on them a ton throughout the year, and they've only gotten better as the year has gone on, especially for their fans, especially for the customer service. Right now, in the playoffs, right? I think we have 3 more weeks of the playoffs, and then the Super Bowl. So, which, by the way, yours truly will be at. Very excited about that. And we'll talk about this some other time. Anyway, but FanDuel has you covered from now until then, every step of the way for all of your betting needs. And with a $5 bet, just a $5 bet for all new customers, you will win $300 in free bonus bets if you hit your first $5 bet. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com, sign up today, create an account, win your first $5 bet, and they will give you $300 in free bets. Now, maybe you wait till Monday. Maybe you wait till Monday, sign up. I'll give you some best bets for the national championship game. Not to brag, but in the the Texas Notre Dame game, we went 6-0 in our picks. We are on a pretty good streak right now, 14-2 in our best bets over the last 3 weeks. Now, if you want to follow those, you can. If you want to place your own, you can. If you want to bet on an over, an under, a team total, a player total, you can do all that at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, make sure you stay tuned. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. All right. I wish we had some mood music to set. It would not be good, I will tell you that. It would be like a dun dun dun. Let's talk about it. Gamecocks men's basketball falls to 0-4. Now, I was hoping that after the loss to Auburn, where you fought just tooth and nail with the best team in the country, I don't think that's even up for debate at this point. You saw Bama go down there. They played both those teams already. You got Florida coming into town next week. But I was hoping, and maybe this is me just being an optimist, or a sunshine pumper even, I don't know. But I thought that the close game against Auburn and the way that it was lost with Pringle missing at the foul line, I thought it was something you could use as a catalyst to jumpstart the rest of the season. And I compared it to the loss at Alabama in football in the way the football team answered the following week, which is when they went to Oklahoma and they started off as, I think, like a 5.5 point underdog, finished before kickoff as a 1-point favorite, obviously won that game by, I think it was like 26, 25 points. And in that game, you could really see, like, that's what started everyone believing in again. Like, hey, look, this is not over. Like, there's still a lot of season left, and they were able to reel off 6 straight wins. Now, I didn't think South Carolina was going to be able to reel off 6 straight wins in basketball because it's in the deepest league in the country, right? Like I just told you, you've already played Bama, you already played Auburn. Those are the number 1 and 4 teams in the country. You get Florida next week. I mean, 3 of your 6 games are against top 5 opponents to start SEC play. But I was disappointed, to say the least, in what happened at Vanderbilt. You took it's just, there's just so many things that this team hasn't been able to do consistently where they can get out of their own way. And I'm going to pull up the box score right now. There's 2 stats that jump off the page, and you guys already know at least one of them. But, like, in the first half, right, you took a 22-19 lead after a 3-pointer. You let Vanderbilt finish that half on a 14-4 run after taking the lead. There was a quote my college baseball coach always says: if you put up a crooked number, you have to come out and shove the next inning. And basically that means, like, hey, if you make some headway and you're able to build on your lead, come back out and just get 3 outs. And I know it's a different sport and there's a lot more momentum and all this kind of stuff. Then it's a totally different sport than basketball. But you were finally able to get a lead when you had done nothing but get in your own way for the first 18 minutes of the game, which, spoiler alert, ended up being foreshadowing for the rest of the game. And every time you thought that there was a potential spot where they could be able to drive a little bit of momentum or anything like that, it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And it was frustrating to watch. Hold on. It was frustrating to watch. And I know you guys were frustrated as well watching it. As I try to pull up the box score here. But you lose this game by 3 points to Vandy. What do you say? Well, I mean, you lose 63-66, and I talked about the run at the end of the first half. The most glaring part of this was the thing that you failed at the most in this game. Dude, we talked about Pringle at the foul line, how bad that was to close out the game against Auburn. You go 18-23. 18-23 from the foul line. You shoot 78%. That's great. Pringle hits a big free throw. I think he might have hit 2 late in the game. But you have your star player, Colin Murray-Broyles, in a spot where he can, I think, take the lead. They were down 1 late in the game. He misses both, which you will rarely find me critique or anything like that with him, because he's the best player on this team. He will be a top 20 pick in the NBA draft. That being said, need those free throws, right? Here's the thing that was clearly the biggest issue. He had 25 turnovers. It's a team that was averaging 11 per game coming in. I think the highest they'd had during the broadcast, Dave Neal said this, the highest they'd had in a game all year was 15 or 16. I mean, with Lamont Paris's teams, you're going to get a fundamentally sound, very high defensive effort, like tough, gritty team. They're not going to run you out of the gym with 90 points per game, 80 points per game. Like that's just not what they do. This is not like a Bama, Kentucky, even an Auburn at times. It's a more defensive-minded team, and they play pretty good fundamental basketball at the very least. They cannot get into a track meet with anybody, as we've seen so far this year. But I mean, you had 2 fast break points all night, 25 turnovers, 25. It just felt like at the end of the game, if you just cut out 1 or 2 of those, you probably win that game, right? You probably win that game. And that part was frustrating, I think, for everyone. Now, there were some good things to take away from this, and you guys know I try to be the eternal optimist here. Colin Murray-Broyles, 14-9. Obviously, he had a great game. And I will say this, too, from a leadership standpoint, he was awesome. He was awesome. He was, and Dave Neal kept talking about it, too, like early in the second half, it was like he just has this look on his eye, like we're not losing this game. And they fought back, and to their credit, like, listen, they fought back. They were in a position to win that game with a tie ball game with like 11 seconds. It was 18 seconds to go and the ball. Sadly, they got rejected at the rim, which is not something I see from Nick Pringle a lot in watching him play basketball the last 2 years, both at Alabama and here. He gets rejected at the rim, tip your cap, because it was a great defensive play from Vandy. And what are you going to do, right? Like, what are you going to do? But the shot clock runs out. They get the ball with 11 seconds left. They get an offensive rebound, which was very frustrating. They get an offensive rebound and a putback, and then Doug Shows and company, the ref, who, if you didn't know who that was, I'm sure before last night, I'm sure you do now, because that man will insert himself into every part of the basketball game, especially in the waning moments, more than any other basketball ref in the country. Doug Shows calls a foul. 0.6 seconds left. They're able to ice the game. Ball game over. Very frustrating. Very frustrating. Now, from a positive standpoint, how about Morris Ugasuk? One, my new favorite name, and I'm saying it right, which is insane, I think. That's how they pronounce it on the broadcast. He was awesome. Number 15, he was 3 of 4 from 3. It felt like he put up way more than that. But he was great from beyond the arc. He also had Arden Conyers. He had a couple big threes as well. You only hit 7 on the night. Like, you were 44% from 3, but you only put up 16 shots from there, which I don't mind necessarily. But it felt like every time you looked up, they were like, it was either a bad pass or just a lack of focus. Just a lack of focus. And it just wasn't great. It wasn't great. The next game we had, you're 0-4, which means it's Arkansas, South Carolina, and Oklahoma, who are, and Oklahoma, who are the only teams to start 0-4 in the conference. You get Oklahoma this week. It's on the road. Texas just beat them. Bama beat them last week. They are not a great team. Georgia beat them. Now, Georgia and Bama, I think, are good teams. I'm not sold on Texas at all. If you can find a way to get a win, if you can find a way just to piece together the things you did well against Auburn and the things you did well against Vandy, you can go beat this team. And maybe that will be the catalyst. But you start looking at what they have coming up, and this is we might just be shifting, to be honest with you. We might just have to shift to women's basketball and baseball coming up. And women's basketball is in a game right now against Alabama. They got a big one next Thursday against LSU, which we will also preview as it gets closer. But after this game with Oklahoma, you got Florida, number 5 team in the country, Mississippi State, who's 15th, Georgia, who's 23rd, A&M, that's 11th, Kentucky, that's 8th, Ole Miss, that's 21st, Florida, that's 5th, and then you get to play somehow 4 unranked opponents in a row. But as of today, you have 14 games left in conference play and 10 over against top 25 teams. You have to get a win. I'm sorry, 9 are against top 25 teams. You have got to figure out a way to get a win against Oklahoma. You have to. All right, when we come back, we are going to talk about a little bit of shade that's being thrown at Alabama, both from a new linebacker and also, this might have been inadvertent, but I'm not going to take it that way, from the scheduling of next season's game against Crimson Tide. We talk about all that and more when Locked On Gamecocks continues next. Green screen. Shout out to our producer, Allie. She is just killing it today, doing a phenomenal job. Make sure you guys will give her a follow on Twitter. She'll hate it, but she also has like a bazillion followers on there because she's way more popular than I am. Now, before we continue on, I want to give a quick shout out to another good friend of the show, talking about our friends at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks, if you're not familiar with them, they are fantastic when it comes to having fun in a betting way, in a betting forum, or betting against your friends even, and some of the simplest ways to make money and bet on sports that are out there in the gambling arena. Now, the place to get real money sports action, it's Prize Picks. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's playoffs or the regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big, enjoying all the football action as well as several other sports across the board. Now is playoff time, and there's no better way to get on the action with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash bet. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I am all about getting in on a player's over-under, whether it be total touchdowns scored, receiving yards, passing yards, rushing yards, any of those things. I love it. Shout out to our live producer again. We don't have a joint Facebook account or a joint checking account. We have a joint betting account, and that's true love. She's going to hate that. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at Lamar Jackson, more than 250 passing yards, Travis Kelce, maybe over 70 receiving yards. Maybe there's going to be a live bet they'll add on there of how many times they show T Swift in the audience or in the stands. It would be at least over 28. Anyway, with Prize Picks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. It's that easy. And with the app, you get winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. It's all one word, all capital letters, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 free money just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. Straight vodka. No, it's not. It's just water. All right, let's get into the final part of the show, and it's going to be very quick. Just something I thought that was funny, okay? So, new linebacker. Jesus be with me when I say this. Justin Okoronkwo. Linebacker you got in the transfer portal from Alabama. This is the kid I told you about. I raved about this guy a bunch when he was first brought over and announced he's coming to the portal like a week ago. The reason I did is from the time covering Bama and talking to people from over there, this is a guy that on the staff, they said repeatedly, and this is under Saban's staff, this is not even under DeBoer's staff, so if that helps the trust part of it, there you go. This is a kid they thought was a 5-star player if he lived in America when he was recruited out of high school. He was not. He lived in Germany. No one's perfect. And he was the number 1 player in the country of Germany. I don't know how many players that's out of, but I do know he was number 1, so you can't get higher than that. He left Bama. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school, 3-star recruit in the portal, but a tremendous amount of upside. He's a kid at 6'2.5", 230 pounds, can run like a deer, runs a 4-flat shuttle, just a phenomenal athlete, very twitchy, and can get sideline to sideline. The type of player like Demetrius Knight Jr. that can thrive and eat in a Clayton White defense. Now, he had a quote that came out today when he was talking with, I think Nick Kelly first reported this. I saw it on Twitter. It might have been an interview with somebody else, but they brought up the fact, they said, what led to you leaving, the state of, it was with the state. It was with the state locally, the paper here in South Carolina, about his decision. His quote was, I felt like the starting spots were already gone. And I mean, it's hard to compete, especially at a place like Bama, with guys who are more experienced than you. Okay. Then he started talking about just the reasons why South Carolina stood out to him. And this was the thing that was interesting, or most interesting to me. He said, it's very impressive, especially compared to Bama. What they are doing here, I really like because it's way more related to the game. Like what drills they do and what lifts they do. That's really what stood out to me. I had brought this up over and over. It's one of the first things I brought up last year about one of the most important building blocks to having a program that is perennially contending, especially for recruits. It's one thing to do it on the field, but it's like the old saying, like you get you'd rather have Jimmy's and Joe's than the X's and O's, and recruiting and getting the best players is the name of the game. Just ask Kirby Smart, just ask Nick Saban, just ask Ryan Day. But one of the ways to do that is the bells and whistles of recruiting, and that is having elite facilities. South Carolina has top 10 facilities in the country. And from a strength and conditioning standpoint, I love the fact that Okoronkwo brought up, listen, the way they are doing this here, I really like because it's way more related to the game, like what drills they do and what lifts they do. That's what really stood out to me. If you've noticed over the past couple of years, those Bama teams look a lot different than they used to. They might still have a couple of guys get off the bus and win the game there. Like you might have a couple of guys, Caden Proctor, Tyler Booker, a couple guys like that, maybe Tim Smith or people like that in the in the trenches. You don't have them in droves anymore. You don't have linebackers that are able to come out at be 6'2.5", 230 running like deer anymore. And if you do, you don't have a ton of depth with it, right? That used to be a team. We talk about that 2013 national championship against Notre Dame, where it's like there were national media that were picking either team, and they were looking at when they got on the field, they're like, oh my God, they're like miniature compared to Alabama. All of that has kind of dissipated with Alabama now. And having the strength and conditioning, the way they train their athletes is a massive deal to be up on, like be ahead of the game. And it looks like, and from what it sounds like with this player like specifically, it's better than in a place like Alabama. And listen, that also may not sound like a big deal, but it is, right? Like whether they are 9-4, whatever, that is still a team and a program that is considered a benchmark, which is why it's even funnier to me that if you saw the news that came out for the 2025 schedule, South Carolina announced who their homecoming game was going to be. And that homecoming game is going to be against the University of Alabama. I don't know what goes into picking a homecoming weekend. I don't know if it's just something they saw on the schedule, like, oh, we got to put this game this weekend because of this, and this. I do know that you got to have a pretty big setup blank to look at Alabama on that schedule and say, that's going to be our homecoming game. Just from the optics alone, I love the confidence. And I think it's a big deal. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just January fodder and we are looking for storylines. But when I saw that, there's very few teams that have scheduled Alabama as their homecoming game that I can remember in the past 15 years. So I love it. I love it. And they got to come to Williams-Brice. I cannot remember when the actual date is. I pray to God it's in October and November and not in September from the heat standpoint. But optically speaking, I love it. Now, anyway, that is today's show. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for everyone who makes Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Like I said, for your second listen, go ahead and check out the SEC squad shows that we have coming out. We have one coming out tonight on Thursday. We also have one that comes out, I believe, every Tuesday or Thursday now that it's the off season. But check out SEC Locked On SEC with our buddy Chris Gordy. Does a tremendous job over there. Make sure that's your second listen after Locked On Gamecocks. We'll be back tomorrow with more Locked On Gamecocks, and we'll see y'all then.